there is like the sky's the limit in the entrepreneurial space, because nothing you see here will be as hard as what you saw in corporate, right? But the human aspects are harder, I think.
Hey everyone, welcome. And today I have Andrea with me. Andrea, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Laura. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so lucky to
Zak, I should recognize you're a human.
Oh, it's okay. My wife doesn't, so it's okay. She's like, I have Andrea here with me, not him. So
whatever.
You said it, not me.
No, Andrea here with us.
Oh,
look at that. Well, we've had the privilege of knowing you for, gosh, it's probably been like 2 years now. It's been that long.
Has it been that long?
2.5.
Well, we've had 2 Florida events, right?
We've been to Florida twice together.
And we must have known each other at least like a year before the first Florida.
So at least 2.5 years.
For at least a solid year before we started hanging out together.
I'm gonna say 2.5 years. That's mine.
But you know what?
That feels right.
It does feel right.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But I love every time I get to talk to you. We have a lot in common, but I love your story too. I love like your background and just how you came into the world of entrepreneurship. And so I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about, this is going to sound funny, but who you were and who you are now.
Oh, it's very different. Very different. No. Yeah, sure. So let's see. I actually, probably the story kind of begins maybe when I went to a military academy, for university, the Merchant Marine Academy, which is one of the 5 federal academies. And then, went into the Air Force, cross commissioned over to the Air Force. So did some military service, but then I entered corporate America after I got out. And because that's all that there was, that was all you do. Like that's, you become a government contractor or and then, it goes from there. So I went into the corporate world, and that's actually not true. There's actually a little stint of me really trying hard to vagabond, like, and live a vagabonding lifestyle. So there's this book actually that we have not talked about.
Wait, vagabond. Define the vagabond. I want you to define that just so we all are
vagabonding. Okay.
Well, I think I know what it means, and you think you know what it means, but I don't know what you think it means.
I got a real good idea, but I don't think it was possible in this day and age.
It is.
No,
okay, so there's a guy. His name is Ralph Potts, and he wrote this book called Vagabonding. And when I got out of the Air Force, my single goal in life was to never hear the word mandatory again and do what I want. That was all I cared about. I wanted no responsibility. I wanted no rules. I wanted like no structure. I never wanted to salute again. I never wanted to understand hierarchy.
So the solution was to go to corporate then.
So this is the part that I leave out of the story a lot of times. There was a solid 3 years where I really tried to vagabond, like hardcore. So,
what does one do when they vagabond?
What's that?
What does one do when they vagabond?
Okay. So the model is this. Okay. Again, remember, this is like back in, this was 2005, just to kind of like put it in, I know I'm dating myself, but this is 2005. So at the time, vagabonding, so there's a guy named Ralph Potts, and he lived this life where he said, all you need is $2,000 in the bank. You throw on your backpack, and then whatever job you have right there, you quit. You go as far as $2,000 will take you, and then you stop, you find a job, you work up until you get $2,000 again, and then you quit. And you go as far as $2,000 will take you, and then you stop. Wherever you're in the world, wherever you're doing, like that's just the place that you land until you can get up to $2,000 again. I thought this was like the best idea in the entire world. There couldn't have been anything better. That was like no responsibility, completely irresponsible, like no ties, you know what I mean? Like no commitment, like gone with the wind, Yeah, this was the life. Like this was what I thought.
3 years. You did this for 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years.
Wait, you actually accomplished it?
Not really, kind of.
Okay.
So, because another thing that happened in this 3-year time period is So my mom got cancer. So during that I went back and took care of her. So a lot of my money I had saved from post-military went into paying rent and all the not fun stuff. But then, and that is when I think of my first taste of like trying to be an entrepreneur. So I like tried to be a travel agent because, you know, a travel agent went hand in hand with my vagabonding, or, you know, I tried to I did the whole like selling timeshares thing. Like it was crazy. Like I did everything I could to try this vagabonding lifestyle. Yeah, but
so you're doing what a lot of people do, which is like, how can I make money wherever I am, or from home, or whatever the case may be. So you did start. Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just that time, but like, for whatever reason, all of the stuff that like, if somebody tries to be an entrepreneur, that didn't come into my search feed, right? Like there wasn't the Russell Brunsons, there wasn't the like, here's how to make money. You know, there wasn't that at the time. It was more like Ponzi schemas, like selling timeshares and MLM offers, but not like good MLM offers. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, if you sell this, I'll give you a penny. And what was that company? It was a while back where like they did the van with like the white van. It was like selling stuff out of your van. I know it sounds so shady.
It sounds like it should be illegal.
Yes, it was. I mean, it was basically like when MLM gets made fun of, it was that stuff. Yeah, it was that stuff. So after about 2 years though, like money totally ran out. Vagabonding wasn't work. So I had a friend who was like, just come stay down with me. So I pretty much just like crashed at his place with the like manager of Barnes and Noble. And like, it was about that time when he was the one, actually, it was like kind of slapped me upside the head. He's like, what are you doing with your life? And I was like,
whatever you call that, I'm bagging it. It's all good.
The vagabonding thing is not working.
What are you talking about? It's great. I'm staying on your couch.
Right, exactly. I don't see the problem. Like, I make a really good guacamole every week for you. Like, what is the problem?
I might not pay you rent, but I give you guac, okay?
Right, yeah. So that was the time that basically I like, you're getting the long version right now. Sorry. No, so good. That was basically the time when I went and decided the place I was like the happiest was during my military time, was when I was first exposed to user experience and the whole, like, how do you actually create products that are based out of a customer-centric perspective. I hated the military part, but I loved the science of it and the research part. So I did a bunch of research and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole field. Like you can actually like study this stuff and like get a degree in it. And I'm like, what? And it was still pretty new at the time. And so there weren't a lot of universities that did it. So I started going on visits and checking out their programs. And so it was at Iowa State and they had a program and I wasn't taking the GRE or GMAT. Like that was done. Like there's no way you're going to get me to do that. That's a mandate and a requirement that I don't subscribe to. So no. So that limited the university options. So Iowa State was one of them. And when I went, I was just going for a master's. Now I had already had a master's. And so one of the professors pulled me aside and was like, what are you doing? Like, get a PhD. And I'm like, what? I can't get a PhD. You know, like I'm a vagabond. That's way too much work. And he's like, but you love this, right? And he's like, you already have a master's. Like, why would you get a second master's? Just get a PhD. I'm like, okay. So then like somebody sponsored me, one thing led to another, like 8 years later, you know, have my PhD and I'm entering into research and development in corporate America. So there's lots that happened in that 8 years, but that was the gist of it.
So we should call you doctor then.
Dr. Andrea.
You can technically, but remember that whole thing from the military where I was like anti titles? So I think
you don't like to tell people you're a doctor.
I feel like it alienates sometimes, you know? So like when I was in my corporate gig, I would use it all day long because it, you know, got me into the room with other doctors because I worked with doctors. But in this entrepreneurial space, I feel like it alienates more than it helps. So
here's the question. You were this corporate guru, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you helped for people who are unfamiliar with the user experience and all that stuff, like break it down to like, what does that mean to like me when I buy something? Like, what does it mean?
Yeah. So basically we're always looking at the intersection, how humans are connecting with and through technology. So that's essentially through a product. There's a lot of branches of UX, but that is the essence of it.
through technology or through products or both, or
There's usually a digital touch point of some sort. It's very rare that a company has only a digital interface with their customers. And so you have to account for all of the touch points, usually from a user experience perspective, but we specialize specifically in the digital touch points.
So what does that look like? Like what, like if I go and like, would I have seen something that like you do or that field does? Like, do I get an email or interact with a computer or what, like, or is it not about, like, is it like other people? Like,
no, it is. Yeah. So like, the thing that you, visually can see would be the things on the screen, right? So
like websites.
It could be a website. It could be a product, like an app on a phone. It could be like an app on a desktop. It could be a portal, that you're engaging with, a customer portal of some sort. It could be a marketplace. It's pretty much anything software related that you'd be interacting with.
Gotcha. So for example,
like, if you think about when you go to the grocery store and you do self-checkout, there's a digital touch point in that experience. And there's actually, that's a combination of digital and ergonomic. So there's physical buttons, right? That part of that experience is both a digital interaction with software, and it's a physical interaction with the keypads and things like that, and the scanner, right? And so that whole thing would be user experience, but I might just specialize in the interface, and then I would couple with somebody who specializes in the ergonomic aspects, and we would come together to create.
So you try to make it so people want to come back and use things again.
And no user manual.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, it's in its most simple form. If I'm trying to create something for the general population, then yes, it's something that not just nowadays, it's table stakes for it not to be painful, right? So like it's table stakes for something to be easy, when in reality doing that is very hard, but it's table stakes because thanks to Apple, you know what I mean? And what they have normalized in terms of experience, it's table stakes to make something easy to use. So now user experience is like not just table stakes, but it's like, how do I add a delight factor? How do I add and usually delight translates to surprise, like a surprising result or a surprising interaction that I'm not expecting, that's fun, or that I feel seen, heard, attended.
But then it makes me want to come back and use it again because I'm like, that place was fun.
Talk
like you're training us like children. You're training us.
Yeah.
Oh, yay. Here, you get a gold sticker. No.
Like a piece of cake.
No, but that makes a lot of sense. So you were doing this and you're doing this in corporate stuff. And then what happened? You just got sick of corporate, or like what happened?
Well, so
my
ego got out of control. So my ego got a little out of control. I rose through the ranks really fast. And so I was rose up through the ranks at John Deere, then decided to go to Silicon Valley because I really wanted to like double down on being in the software world. And all of my mentors were like, if you're not in Silicon Valley, then you're not in software. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to get to Silicon Valley. So I knew a research firm out there who was creating a piece of software that all of the big corporations used. And I was an avid user of them, having been at a big corporation. And so I went and again, rose up there as like the VP of product strategy and user experience research for the research platform. So I was the person that they would bring in, like when they wanted to close the Google deal or the Microsoft deal or the PayPal deal or I would come in and be I guess technical term would be the sales engineer. So I would come in and talk, to the big PhDs in those companies who were trying to infuse their research practice into the product development process. And so I would say, this is how our tool can help you do that. And so that was what I would come in to help.
So you would give the logical justification for the salesperson's emotional buy.
Not just the logic, like I could talk, I was a subject matter expert. So like the sales guy could say,
SME.
Yeah. So like the sales guys say like, hey, we have this feature, and he could go like maybe 1 or 2 levels deep. Right. But when they started to ask really nerdy questions, like, how do I randomize on this particular software if I want to control for this variable, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Then it would be like, oh yeah, our software can do that, but you might want to use this other technique. You know what I mean? So like, anyway, yeah.
So what you're saying is you're really smart.
In one particular area. In one particular area.
So you go from like, I mean, if you're doing that stuff, like I'm just guessing. I'm a common folk me here. You were like a pretty like that's a fast paced lifestyle. Yes. It was very flashy in a lot of ways. Like, you know, like
I was on the road 75% of the year. I was
staying at super nice hotels, nice meals, nice like expense budgets. Did you have like company cars, like all that?
Sometimes, Yep. It was very nice. It was very nice.
So you decided like, I got like this nice salary. I got all these cars. I got all this stuff. I'm out. Like, what happened?
No,
like,
not at all. No, I had that level of control over that decision. No, no. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm. So, there was 3 things that happened. So the first thing is when you're a startup in Silicon Valley, you have 2 paths. You either are going to get acquired or you're going to go public. Mm-hmm. And so we were right at that point where we're on the precipice of one of those 2 paths. And so usually when that happens, you need to get a new round of investment, investors to come in and invest in, a couple million, in order to get to that. So we were right at that point, and the CEO had just got another round of investment with a new investment team. And this particular investment team decided to be way more hands-on than the other investment team. So at the time, it was like the CEO, me, the lead sales guy, like the VP of sales. We were this really tight-knit group that were working together pretty well, closing deals. Everything was great. We were running the show. It was awesome. Well, these investor guys came in. It started to be not so awesome. Like they just, because I think from their perspective, what investors care about is money. They care about, their investment making money. So they didn't give a crap about user experience or product design or, that was not of interest to them. It was pretty much like, give me the bare minimum. So I did not do well with that. I also remember that whole thing of me leaving the military and never wanting, to have like, structure
more
or
saluting.
Smartly. Yeah. So we started to get into a lot of conversations where it was basically, you need to salute smartly. Yeah. And I was like, oh God, this isn't going to work for me. So yeah. But at the time I thought that like I walked on water, I was closing these deals. I was the person they would bring in, like, you know what I mean? Everything was great. So I was like, it doesn't matter if they don't like me. They can't, do you know House? Yeah, that was my mentality. I was like, I'm too good. Like, whatever. They can not like me, but I'm
untouchable. It's
like,
okay.
Yeah, I'm untouchable. Exactly. So that was one of it. Yep. My ego was out of control. So the second thing is that I always had the favor at that time of the dev team doing product research. Well, I kind of ticked off the wrong person on that side of the house too. So, and then the second thing, it was funny because like basically he was like, you have to do timesheets. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Sorry. So like, anyway, that was like I think one of the hair on the camel's back. Second perfect storm was, I also was not like, if you weren't good at your job, it was very much like, get out of my way. Like either be good at what you do or get out of my way. Like that was very much my mentality.
I'm kind of scared now.
I get a little like I've gotten a little of that sense from you only because I work in corporate. So I probably did that a little bit myself occasionally.
Yeah.
So I probably understand that personality type.
Yes.
As my wife points at me and says, that's you.
Yes. Yes.
Well, do you want help with that? No, I got it. Please leave me alone. Oh.
Yeah. And I think it was like, Zak, I think maybe you and I are a little bit similar in this, and that I realize now where I'm at, right? I don't want to be that way to people, right? For my own integrity. And I just think everybody is human and we all need empathy and compassion and, but I would be lying if I didn't say, if I have to slow down too many times, you know what I mean? I like to process fast. I like to go fast. I like hard problems. I like complex problems. And if I'm having on a regular basis to be slowed down, it's hard. Like I don't do well with it.
You two are the same.
Yeah.
In that regard.
I can agree with that. Like I get a little frustrated when it's like, what are we doing?
You all should be nervous for me. Like, there's 2 people here that both get frustrated with slow people. Okay. Just kidding.
No, you are not. No,
remotely slow. So we don't even go there.
Yes. Yes. Right. But I think honestly what it is, it's actually less about intelligence. I think for me, it's about like our life is too short. So I am so wired towards like, find what you love doing and just do it and be good at it and be a craftsman of it. Like, and if you're not doing that, then you're wasting everyone's time, including your own. Like, and I think I have that so wired, you know what I mean? And so it's not that you're like slow. What I see is like, you don't actually want to be doing this. So why are you
That's
doing
true.
it?
There
We're
are a lot of
wasting
people
all of our
like that.
time,
Mm.
you know, and it's like,
Yeah,
just
and that-
embrace, like, you don't want to do it. You don't want to learn it. You don't like it. So
Right.
just let someone else do it. Like yeah.
pick a different lane. Why are you you're in the fast lane and you're going slow? Why?
So
Yeah.
really,
It's okay.
so
Yeah.
you're good if people are doing the things that they're called to in their assignment and stuff, and you recognize that, hey, they have a different gifting than I do. It's just a matter of when people are trying to do things that they don't want to do and they're not gifted at, and it's not their assignment. It's like,
Yeah. And they have no interest in like that self-knowledge or that self-awareness, you know,
they don't want to grow in it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had basically, you ticked off people.
Yeah.
You
Maybe
picked
investor
up the
man.
wrong people. Yes, I ran over like too many people, you know, inside the company. And then the third thing, which was probably the biggest thing, is that I took a trip down to Peru, spent 7 days with a shaman, did the whole ayahuasca thing. And when I came back, I remember like my very first day sitting back in the boardroom, and it was just all BS. Like I couldn't stomach it anymore. It was like, none of this matters. Like, you know, like, you know, the positioning and the posturing and the, like, how do we, you know, sell
Well,
it?
you know,
What did you call it?
because we got bought out, right?
Yeah.
So
Zach, for those of you who didn't know,
Yeah.
Zach used to work in corporate.
yeah, so I was a supervisor. I was a quality supervisor at that time, I think. Anyway, doesn't matter. So like there was a decent amount of people like in my building, right? We had directors and VPs and like all that were in my building because we had a really big building.
Yeah.
And we just called it peacocking because
Yes.
people from the other company would show up on the floor, and all these people that never cared to do anything and never were involved would just show up, and they're like,
Yes.
look at me. And you're like,
Yes.
like, what are you doing? You never come on the floor.
Right.
Why are you out here? Ugh.
And
Yeah,
here's
exactly.
secret. I don't know if you know this, Andrea. The hair. You knew him when he had short hair,
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The hair. You want to know why he keeps growing it? It's because at corporate he had to look presentable and had to like wear he didn't have to wear suits or anything, but he had to wear like nicer clothes, look nice, be
Polo and
shade,
tucked in and slacks.
So he's just
Yeah.
like, it's the same version of getting out of the military and be like, no.
No, it's true. Even
The
like
lesser version of it.
even before we went on today, you know, like, oh, we got to be camera ready. Like I'm so like, I still have it, right? Where it's like, oh my God, I'm like sweatshirt. I have no makeup. I've done nothing. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So, but it's more real, right? Like, and I think that's what I keep coming back to again and again in this entrepreneurial journey. You know, it's like, I'm more interested in raw and authentic and real and unpolished and B-roll, and let's just be humans together and try to figure out this crazy life. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
So you came back, and I'm assuming it was a mutual parting of ways.
No, it wasn't. No. So, cause I was still, my ego was throwing an ever living fit, right? Because like I lived a pretty good life. I could do whatever I want, but it was also like, there's this subconscious, right, that had been woken up. It was like a beast had been woken up, and it was like, this is no longer this is no longer acceptable. But my ego is like, shut up. Like, what are you doing? You know, so like,
I like the car.
Yeah. And then at that time, I was like trying to, what they call integrating after these experiences. I was trying to integrate. Right. And there was this one woman in particular who I had treated pretty horrible, you know, for the past couple months. She had been like talking to that investor guy that I really ticked off. Right. And the other people that I had ticked off, and basically, he like came to the rescue. Right. And so I decided, because I was the only, senior VP at the time, because they had fired all the other ones. And so I was the only senior VP, female VP, and the woman was like middle management, you know, and I was like, so I went to the investor again, thinking in my new profound state of being, I could have a human conversation. I was not evolved yet for that conversation. Pretty much, I just said like, hey, you're doing, you know, what we call knight in shining armor. And if you really want this woman to be a leader in the organization, that's the worst possible thing you could do for her, you know? So I was like, you need to let us just navigate the situation. And I think like
kindly to that
reaction, like all of it, right, was like, you think I'm being sexist, or like, you know what I mean? It was like, there was like, all of a sudden now we catapulted into like legality and liability, right? So within a week I was gone. Like within a week, it was like, we have a severance package for you. And I was like, okay. Check.
How did that feel? Like, okay, so you there, you have
it was
like, what were you thinking right then?
I mean, the way that it all went down was really crappy, which I can't really go into. But it was like it was just a really crappy phone conversation. And I think it was one of these ones where at one hand is like rug pulled, right? On the other hand, it was like, thank goodness, you know, I'm out of like, I don't have to do this integration thing that felt so hard, like insurmountable, you know? And I had already been talking to somebody up in Washington and like starting our own business. It was the same person I went down to Peru with. So it was just kind of okay, this is happening, you know?
So you had been thinking about entrepreneurship and thinking about like running your own business. Did you know like what you want to do, or did you just know?
No, the only thing I knew that entrepreneurs do with a PhD is be a consultant. That's all I knew, you know,
so
like
I guess I need to be a consultant.
Right. So I was like, I literally like, I had a WordPress site, we had blog posts, we had already started, like, we were going to be a consultant. We had our framework, we had our rates, we had our packages, like how we could come into your organization and be a consultant and do what we do. And anyway, yeah. So like it was.
Did that ever take off or no?
Not at all. No, not a one. So that was actually my first encounter with how hard traffic is, right? Because I fell into the whole like, we're going to do a blog and I'm doing SEO class and it's going to be amazing and everyone's going to just find us. And like, that's not at all what happens. That's not what happens. So anyway, yes, so, that was my first thing.
So here's the thing. And this is what this whole like podcast that we do is kind of about, is like, all right, so somebody, and people start all different places. You were coming out of corporate. Some people stay-at-home moms. Some people are people who have been working part-time or full-time or whatever, come from all sorts of walks. And you're like, okay, I don't want to be in a job-esque anymore.
Yeah.
Some people try to do both simultaneously. Obviously, that wasn't a choice for you.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, I either have to find another job and work on this like entrepreneur thing, or I just got to work on the entrepreneur thing. How did you go from I don't have anything, like what did you do? What were your actions? What were your thought process of, I want to get here, but I'm here. Okay. Like, what did you do to close that gap to actually start doing something?
I don't know that I had I want to get here, which was made it so hard. What I did have is military and corporate, right? And said, I will never work for, at the time, men again. I will never, if I am going to create my own destiny, I work way too hard and give way too much. I will never give it to someone else's system again inside of their system. So it was more of like, I'm running from this, not I'm going to this, you know?
You kind of did that too. You were like, I solve problems and I solve problems and make people millions of dollars and I don't see any of it. I'm sick of solving problems for other people.
Yes.
I'm going to start solving problems for myself. That's what you were saying.
Well, I mean, I'll start solving problems for others, right? Because that's what entrepreneurship is.
But as my own entity.
But I am the person that like we're exchanging value based on how much, right?
Yes.
Like you will pay me for the value you receive, not, hey, I'm going to take this paycheck and hang out and solve millions and millions of dollars worth of problems and get a 3.5%, not even 3.5% raise every year and a good job. You got a little bit more than everybody else that your peers
begging for vacation when I like work a godly amount of hours, or you know, like that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I think for me, it was autonomy.
Okay,
it was if I was going towards anything, it was autonomy. It was just, I knew I had to be an autonomous entity at that point going forward in my life.
I think a lot of people do that unintentionally. They are after freedom, but they don't really know how to get that and what that looks like. Yeah. So you did the same thing. You're like, all right, I'm not doing this. So this seems to be the option.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think has helped? Like you have a, because you're a perfectionist, you might not call it a successful, but you have a successful agency. You do, whether you want to call it that or not. You have I know, cause I know you have a successful agency, right?
Thank you.
How do you go from like, okay, I don't have anything. Like, what was your mentality, or what helped you get to the point that you are actually able to make some money outside of a job in corporate and military? Like, what helped you?
So the first time that I actually made money was because of Catherine Jones. So and it happened pretty fast. So, or after so there was like a year of me trying this consulting thing. Then I was like really broke. All the severance ran out.
I was like, you're living on severance.
Done.
Okay.
Credit cards were maxed. Yeah. That was done. I was driving Lyft and I was working graveyard shift, making sandwiches. And I was just like, I was actively, probably every moment of the waking day, I was actively consuming audiobooks and podcasts and like YouTube videos and like, how do I do it? Yes.
He was in his office listening.
Like a crack feed. Yeah. I was like, somebody, the answers are out there. They gotta be. So
there's people doing it.
Yes. So like I even, so I normally don't say this name, but I remember it was at a really low point and I got sold on Legendary Marketer, like hook, line, and sinker. Anyway, typical bro marketing, right? And it was $3,000. And I remember I had that, and there was no way that I could make that. Like I didn't see any way that I can make that. So I remember I went out on one of my breaks from the sandwich making, and I called my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm so ashamed to actually ask you this, but can you give me 3,000, to get into this program? I really feel good about it. And he did. And I got into the program and it was horrible. And they just kept selling me more stuff and just kept up. And they're like, you don't understand. Like, this was my last penny. This was it. This was my shame and my ego and my pride. And this was it. Like, do not ask me for another cent right now. And they kept asking me. And I was like, oh, and so I was just like, screw you guys. I just was consuming the content, and Russell Brunson, that's when Russell Brunson came into my life and he started talking. I was like, who is this guy? Like, he's really interesting. Like, okay, he might have some answers. So go over, next thing I know, I used all of my like flight points and all of my, I think I told you guys this story before, but I used all of my flight points and all of my rental car and all of my hotel freebies to go to Funnel Hacking Live. And what was that? It was like 2019, I think.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the year before we went. Yeah, 2019.
Yeah. So it was like 2019, had $10 a day for food, like, and
I was buying like a coffee.
50% of that went to coffee. Yeah. So then I was like, so I was there, I was like in the back row because I was just overwhelmed. And I was like, it was too much. So I was like in the back row every single day, but I had my computer. Yeah. I was like taking notes, like just taking everything in. I actually made crib notes from that year. And I was like, I could sell my crib notes anyway. So like, it was funny. And I made this huge infographic for everything that happened that year. Anyway. And then when they announced the 2CCX program, because I think I was just hungry and they're like, and you don't have to pay for a month. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So like, I went back, I had like a warm meal, talked to amazing people. Like the most amazing part though, is that at that year, that was when Catherine spoke on stage. And so it was like, she was the only one that I've ever done this for. After the presentation, I like rushed out and I had to meet this woman. And so I like said hello to her in her gold jacket. And then it
would have been 2020. That was the year we were there. That was our first year too.
Oh, okay. Well then, yes, it was 2020. Oh my gosh, we began our journey together.
It was right before the pandemic, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was our first year.
Amazing.
We just bought tickets in 2019.
We were in the front right-hand spot.
We probably walked past him like a dozen times.
That's crazy. Isn't that amazing? That's like those movies. Yeah.
Were you in the back right or back left?
It was back center left.
Oh, okay.
We were going to the other side.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very last seat, like the last possible seat.
So you went all fangirl and went and stalked her.
Yep, went and stalked her. Couldn't afford her because I didn't have any, I like was tied into this other thing. And then it was 5 a.m. one morning. I get an email. I wake up and like the very first thing I see on my screen is, fine, I'll give it to you for free. I was like, what? So I got into Safe Design School for free. And she never found, like, I don't know what loop I got in, what happened. But that second I like jotted out of bed. I was like, yes, and like went in, and I was so scared I was going to get caught. Like it was too good to be true that I did not sleep for 4 days and just consumed. Yes. And like did all of it, like all the badges, everything. Cause I was like, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get kicked out. Like, I gotta go. I gotta keep going. Like, come on, let's go. You know,
More
like,
coffee, more Starbucks.
stat,
Somebody
you
do
know?
something.
And that
Yes.
like literally, like you don't know how you got it for free. You don't know like
I have
what
no
happened.
idea.
It was
I
it
have
like
no
a
idea.
personal email from her, or you have no
No, it
idea?
had to have been an automation email of some sort, right? Because it was like, it was copy. I mean, it was a nice email. It was like, because I had been stalking her, right? Like I probably had watched that webinar a gazillion times. You know, I had gone on to her websites. I had followed her on social. I was there for every 9 at 9. I was in her world, like consuming every single thing that she did. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it was like in a consolation prize. Like, all right, let's.
I didn't get the
like,
same
flatten this
consolation
effort,
prize, so I
let's
don't
try
know
to
what
get her an
happened.
upsell, like or something. Which, if that was the play, I pretty much have bought everything she's given since then, with the exception of Black Friday deal. I think it was the first time I didn't buy something from Catherine, but yeah.
So that process was what opened up the door
Yeah.
for you for making money.
Yeah. So like she had the money, make money by the weekend. And so then I think I put out in the Clickfunnels community or the 2CCX program, because I was in it. I was like, hey, I need, I'm looking for, I'll do a free funnel build for you if you're interested. And it just so happened to be a membership build for a lady who was doing visas out of the UK. So I had no idea what I was doing. I think I charged $400 for the whole project. And I made an opt-in funnel, a sales funnel, and a membership experience. And yeah, and I was like hook, line, and sinker. And then Kieran Bryan came into my world. She was my second client. And again, it was like $400 and it was a membership build. She's like, this is amazing. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love it. And so, yeah. And so then it just kind of started to spiral from there. And every single client I got was a membership build.
So partly it was just taking action on things. And
Yeah.
I mean, in that world, Catherine was actually one of the first, she was the reason we started making money too, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But she always says, and I think it was her coach that said it, Katie Richardson, but movement creates clarity. And so you just kept moving until finally you just started making money. Like you're like, I'm going to consume and move.
I think there's some of that, but I also think, I was actually just talking to Susan this morning a little bit about this. And that is, I think that what Russell does so well is he gives you conviction and he gives you clarity, you know what I mean? And he makes you believe that this is possible and easy. Mm-hmm. And then you start doing it, right? And there's two things that happen. I think the first thing that happens is you run into like overwhelm, technical overwhelm. Like, I don't know what that clarity is, right? But I also think something else has happened. And that is that when we are such believers in Russell, that we start to lose that voice in ourself. Like we don't know our own knowing, we know his knowing. And so then there's like this wrestle, not just like the learning aspect of it, which is like the healthy normal, but I think there's also this like, how do I integrate my own knowing into my journey?
But doesn't that happen? That happens not just with Russell, like any coach.
Everyone.
Yes. It happens with.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Because it's like, I think at the end of the day, the beautiful thing about a learning journey is if you really want to learn it and make it your own, you have to make it your own, meaning you have to attach it to something that you know, that you believe, that you have faith in, that you understand. And it's that leap that's so hard.
But that's what you ended up not falling into, but realizing when you keep getting these memberships. Well, guess what? Memberships really need to be successful. Your background.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Because unlike funnels, which are single touch point, digital touch points, right? I come in, I do the thing, I transact, right? What I specialized in corporate was what I would call multi-touch point, right? Like I'm adopting a product, I'm in there every day, I'm doing the thing. And so with membership sites, it's exactly that. It's somebody's coming in and there's an ongoing engagement with this digital touch point. And so it totally fit with my background. And I was like, oh, so Clickfunnels, design hacking, and my background like came together in membership builds. And then of course, everybody needs funnels and everybody needs, in order to sell the membership thing, but it all just started to come together into a beautiful thing. And then Dan Havey came into my life.
Yeah. And Zak talks about that a lot too, because his story is like he already did a bunch of automations and stuff. And he realized after he came into the world.
And I was because I worked in a factory, right? So we were, scheduling and efficiency was top of mind.
Yes.
right? So like you lived and died on efficiency and how fast you can get a product through all the steps and all those things. And so when you look at that constantly, like, then you look at everything that way. And I already like, I realized in the entrepreneurial journey, like I was just always that way, right? Like that was me. And that was part of the reason I excelled in that job, is because I was an efficiency person.
Right.
Right. So like, I just did well because there were people that aren't efficiency people trying to do a job that demands efficiency. Well, you know, you're going to kind of get pushed out of the way. But unlike you, I didn't have the degrees, right? So I ran up against ceilings, and I think a lot of the educated folks were threatened, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
You're threatened by somebody that's good and understands things probably beyond what you understand, and I don't have a degree.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, ooh. Anyway,
but usually threatening. Yeah.
But you know what happens though is what he did is he ended up just like you. He had to get into the world and understand the world. They're going into the world of entrepreneurs. So he had to get into that world. And once he got into the world, then he could go back and look at his strength, who he was, what he brought to the table, and say, how can this serve in this world? Yeah. That's the same thing that you did. But so many people try to go into the world, the new land, and they forget everything behind them. And they're like, I got to get into this new land. And so I'm going. And then you realize, just like what you just said, they try to become somebody else or do whatever the person and adopt them as a person, that coach, whatever they're doing, they try to adopt what they're doing instead of saying, how can I take what I have, layer it into this world, and make myself, you know, Russell calls it blue ocean, right? Yeah. So red ocean means there's people all trying to do what you're doing. But if you really, truly understand who you are and you bring that into the new world, then all of a sudden you find your niche. I think that's how you find your niche.
I would agree with you. I think though what's really interesting, and I don't know if everyone's story is like this, but so I participate in plant medicine now. Since my ayahuasca journey, I will continue to have that as a part of my own healing and my own journey. And in that practice, there is oftentimes a conversation around death. And that oftentimes when you are engaging in those type of activities, it is a death. Right. There's a death of some sort, a death of ego, a death of, you know, of letting go, a death of the current version of yourself. And I have, so my favorite poet, his name is David White. He's basically my form of religion, I guess you could say. But, you know, and he has this beautiful saying that you have to kill the current version of yourself to understand the new version. Right. And I remember I have this heater down here, and I remember the day, and it was kind of at the peak of, I hadn't yet, you know, I had just made money doing those first membership sites, but I didn't yet understand how I could bring my user experience and my big corporate knowledge in, because it was too much, you know, like it's not what they needed. And I remember I like pushed my chair back. I'm like crawled into a ball. I was just like weeping because I'm like, okay, I will let go of all the title, all of my love of UX. Like it's gone. I will be a blank slate for whatever you would like me to do. Like I will, it's death. Like it is death of that being, of that knowing, of that expertise, of that big brain, you know, like just help me be able to be autonomous. That's all that I care more about that than my need to be a guru UX person, you know? So it's like, if it means I have to let go of it, I'll let it die. And I remember for probably a good month, there was like a grief. There was a weeping. There was that's no longer my identity. That's not what I do. And then sure enough, beautiful universe works in amazing ways. After about a month, and where I was really like, okay, it's gone. Like that's no longer it. I'm a funnel builder. I'm a membership builder, and I just get to do some cool membership stuff. All of a sudden, like Dan starts coming into my life and all of this like crazy ways that we can make actual great user experiences with Clickfunnels starts coming in. And all of a sudden now I have a service that is like the learning journey map and the customer journey, and journey crafting started. And right. But it was this death of self before I could come back to what I knew, but in a new way. in a new light.
I feel like that's like a life principle though. Like what you just said is true. It's a principle that no matter what arena you're in, it is. It's like you have to go down before you can go up. You have to, like Myron Golden, who's in that world too, he always uses the analogy of like, what does a seed have to do to become an apple tree? Well, it has to cease to be a seed before it can be an apple tree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Because you have to let go of the way you knew it, what you knew, in order to actually use it in the new, like in the new.
100% agree.
Yeah. And I think that that's just a principle in life, and, you know, and so like, but that's a great way to describe it, is sometimes you have to let that go to like, you didn't even think about it for a while until all of a sudden he was into this world. And then he was like, oh, that's how it fits in.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just recently discovering that. And sometimes I feel like we want to go in to the entrepreneurial world or a new journey, and we want to just know it all right away.
Yeah.
We just want to know what we're good at, know how we fit, know what we're experts at, know, like, be able to speak it clearly and do it. But just like you provide journeys in membership areas, life is the same way. You can't, like, part of the journey experience in memberships is because you can't learn it all right away.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that was a struggle. Like, I think that's a struggle for high achievers coming out of a corporate setting, right? Like, I was a high achiever. I was the SME in a lot of instances, right? I was the guy that people called, but I spent almost 11 years in that place.
Yeah.
Well, in what world do you think you're just going to drop into entrepreneurship and online marketing and be that person
in like a month?
Immediately.
Yeah.
But that's who, like, because you're used to that kind of traction, you're like, I'm gonna hit the ground running. This is good. I got it. And then you're like, whoa, this is a little more intense than I thought.
You explain it. It's like going into a foreign.
Oh yeah. Land. Yeah. Like, it's like expecting to go to, like, I don't speak French. It'd be like going to Paris and like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna move over there and with no help. Never learned the language. I'm just going to go and I'm going to be the same person that I was back in the US.
Right.
Nope. You ain't even gonna be able to do basic stuff like get some food. Like, how are you going to order food? You can't even order. You know,
mange.
I want this. Give me that right there.
Exactly. Your point, the principal point, if you go in and you act like you did before and you don't bother to do anything, you're like, I'm going to be the same person. I'm not going to change.
Right.
And guess what? You're never going to assimilate. You're never going to find your new place in that world. You have to literally cease to be who you were and say, okay, I'm going to learn, I'm going to go on this journey. And then out of it becomes a new version of you that takes your past land and your present land and it puts it together. And that's where that sweet spot is.
Yeah.
But it's painful and nobody wants to go through the
painful. Because it's death, it's grieving, it's, you know, especially if you've over-identified with it for a very long time. It's really hard to let go of that.
You called it detoxing from corporate.
You are, yes, yeah.
Luckily, I under-identified with it because I was
so detox though.
I did detox a lot. Yeah. Well, because you got to figure, like, you have like schedules and you're used to like doing this, like you have these routines and your body is just like so ingrained.
And you're used to the fast pace,
right? Like, and you're used to going and like the pace is way different.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. You know,
way different.
Like it's way, you're like, okay, am I like, am I okay? Like, I'm not like running, like hard charging, doing stuff, like running around. I don't have notebooks, you know, with 30,000 notes in it. Like I got to do this. Like, okay, take a break. It's gonna be all right.
So true. Yeah. Yeah, like there'd be on a regular day, like at least one of my time spots where I'd have 3 meetings going at one time and was like participating in the 3. Like it was crazy. Yeah, you're right. Like
you don't do that all the time anymore, right? That's just...
Maybe once a month I'll be on 2 calls at a time, you know.
But when you're just a participant listening, right?
Yeah. You
know, like I love that story, and I love the principle that comes out of it is like, if you guys are like newer or working your way into entrepreneurship, no matter where you came from, if you're corporate or if you were not corporate or like college or like wherever you are on the road, there is a process of assimilating into it. And just because you're not instantaneously hitting the ground in this new land, like got it 100%, it does not mean you won't be successful. I mean, for you, you had to keep going. Yeah. You had to not stop.
And I would say too, that like, especially with the corporate background, Zach, I think you'll appreciate this. And that is the nature of the problems that you solve in the entrepreneurial space will never be as complex as the nature of the problems you solved in corporate, right? Like the degree of variables you'd have to account for, which is essentially the definition of complexity, right? Is like tenfold in enterprise.
Minimum.
So like you might at times get underwhelmed, I think, on the complexity of the problems that you solve. But I think that the nature of the problems are much more grounded in human things in the entrepreneurial space than in the technical things. So it's like, if you are at all technically inclined and coming from corporate, I think there is like the sky's the limit in the entrepreneurial space, because nothing you see here will be as hard as what you saw in corporate, right? But the human aspects are harder, I think.
Well, and obviously, like we're talking mostly about online entrepreneurship and some of the smaller companies. I mean, if you go start if you're an entrepreneur and you go start a huge company, then you can do that. But I don't think any of you all want to do that.
Even a big entrepreneurial company, like I still don't think because I think it's a whole nother level when you're dealing with like market share and
I mean, like corporate-esque.
That's a different ballgame for sure.
And we're talking about
but
privately owned companies.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, we were private for most of the time I was there. But we were obviously we were
operating as a
when I got there, we were like a small, it was still small-ish. And then in that, I don't know, probably within a couple of years, they had purchased a new building and really they went from probably 300 people to 1,000 people, probably 1,500 people. And so it was this huge jump, and structures changed, and there was just a lot. But you're right, the complexity of problems that you're solving it's not even it's way differently. Yeah, it's a fraction. And I can't even imagine, because you were in software, so yours is exponentially bigger than manufacturing.
I don't know. I mean, because you have a lot of the legality and we maybe the hardest cases were international tax law, right? That was the hardest it got, I think. But yeah, I think manufacturing, you have high risk, and you have tolerance and expectation. You know what I mean? The regulation, it was huge.
Plastic, so we had we had big tolerances because it's flexible. So
got it. Okay.
So let me ask you this, last question, and then I want to tell some people some stuff about you. But you like that open loop. Anyways,
that's good.
No, now that you made the leap, you're here. Was it worth it?
100%. Yeah. I'm, and I think I'm still very much in the early stages still, of my entrepreneurial journey. But yeah, I mean, I arrived at that. It's my shot. This morning, even I was redoing how I do my services, right? And I don't have to answer to anyone. I have to make sure that I get my team buy-in, to make sure that they're okay and I'm doing right by them. But other than that, it's up to me. I can choose exactly how I want to deliver it, who I want to deliver it to, how, when I want to deliver it, the price point, it's all up to me, and I love it. And I get to choose who I get to work with and who I don't, and who I bring into my world and who I don't. And I love that. That is just the best gift ever that I could give to myself. That's exactly what I wanted. And even though it is 10 times harder than what I did in corporate, it's so worth it. And I think I'll say this too, and I say this often, I think the entrepreneurial journey, your business will birth you more than you will birth it. And that to me is the road to autonomy, is deep understanding, appreciation. How do I navigate this being, and that it doesn't just afford you it demands it of you in order to actually do it right.
When we were first starting, we heard a quote from somebody that said, entrepreneurship is the best not self-improvement, but self-discovery, self-improvement course you never signed up for.
Yes.
And we're
real talk.
We're oh yeah, totally. And then we're, oh yeah, I mean, dang, it really, it's a becoming thing in so many ways.
So much.
And it is challenging in a lot of ways, but I don't know. For us, it's been worth it as well too.
It's worth it for sure.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. The cool thing is this. Well, first of all, I know that you have people who are interested in Clickfunnels and membership sites and the stuff that you do. I know you have an active Facebook group that they can join. Yeah.
I have two.
Okay.
Which is
what are those?
But yes.
So what are those so that they can, so that they know those?
Yeah. So, okay, I have my agency side, which is Journey Crafting. And we provide high-end membership builds and custom builds and any kind of customer journey consultation. And basically in that stack of ClickFunnels, ActiveCampaign, these are the two primary ones, but helping anybody with that full system and creating awesome journeys through funnels. So that's the agency side. I do have a Facebook group that's associated with that, but it's super small. So basically the place to start there is discovery call, and then we decide. And then my second one is I partner with a woman named Susan Leonardson, and we have CF 2.0 Geek Out, which is basically very similar in that we're obsessed with how do you connect humans with and through technology, but very specifically ActiveCampaign, ClickFunnels, and that stack. And even more specifically, how it all started was CF 2.0. Given the state of the union of where 2.0 is, we do 2.0 and 1.0 now in that group. So it's
and if you're in the ClickFunnels world, you know what that means.
If you're not, join the group and you'll figure it out.
You figure it out.
Yeah. And we also bring in our partners like Group Track as a piece of software. So basically we have what we call the Geek Tech Stack, which is how you optimize to create amazing customer journeys with and through technology, aka ClickFunnels, ActiveCampaign, and other technologies. And it's kind of cool in that group too. We have something called Geek Mods, which is also enhancements that you can add into your memberships and into your funnel builds in order to improve the customer experience. And so we're always just looking through that customer experience lens. So yeah, that is CF 2.0 Geek Out. We have a YouTube channel and a Facebook group. And then we also have the Academy where you can come in and get support and special training. And I'm actually really excited because Susan and I were working this morning on the framework for what is the Geek Out framework for how to approach funnel builds and any kind of build that you want to do. So it's very cool. We're weaving in journey crafting into the mix. So super fun.
Awesome. Good stuff.
Go check out Geek Out. I'll put them in the chat.
CF 2.0 Geek Out.
I'll put them in the chat if you guys want to.
Crafting
description.
Something.
Yeah.
Remember that one.
We'll put them in the description if you guys want to check them out and follow Andrea and learn from her. She is, and honestly, guys, like we have learned so much in our own journey of agency stuff and membership site stuff and all of it. So from you and Catherine Jones were like two of the first people who really helped get us going and get us moving. So anyways, so we appreciate you being here.
The love is very reciprocated. I would not be where I'm at without our amazing conversations and just helping you guys, always pushing me a little bit further. So I so appreciate you.
It's mutual. So thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and we'll have you back real soon. So it's not goodbye. It's just see you later.
Right.
You guys. Talk to you soon. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you check out this next episode.
Right here.
We know you're going to enjoy it.